So one of the questions I get asked time and time again is why are some of my favourite bikes that I personally own these crusty old rusty ATBs and 90s mountain bikes, and it's a difficult one. A lot of it is nostalgia. I remember these bikes when they were new. I remember looking at them in the shop windows. The character, the colour schemes, you know, there's so much, they've got so much going for them, these old bikes, in so many ways. This is the other of my crusty collection, which is a Specialized from, I think, 97ish, 98. And again, it's a crusty old thing. It's got a bit of patina on it, but there's just something about it. There's something about the way that it rides, the fact that it was so cheap to put together. It's got a few clever little bits and pieces on it, which I'll go into in a second. But yeah, it's just one of those bikes that I just keep coming back to all the time. It's very usable. And then looking back at the Peugeot again, the character of this bike is just phenomenal. It's just got such a great look to it. I mean, even, you know, just if you just look at the colour scheme and just how retro it is, an old steel bike like this has just got so much character. There's plenty of patina on this thing. It's certainly not what you would call a clean bike, you know, a restored bike. I'd say it's sympathetically restored, because it was a lot rougher than this when it came in. Got the lovely old thumb shifters there, as you can see, the Suntours, and the big moto style brake levers, which I really like. And it just harks back. I mean, this bike is in 1985, so I would have been what, 10 or 11 back then, and this thing would have been sat in the shop window and I would have been ogling over it. And then you just add a few sort of period accessories like the saddle, got some more modern grips on there, some more modern tyres, and then an old school Suntour VX road mech on there, which would never have been on this bike, but it works really well and it does the job, along with the rest of this drivetrain. So you got your 3x with your ultra wide range and your Sachs, the original Sachs mech that was on this bike. And then the bike does the rest for itself with these colours and this sort of livery, and it's such a cool old thing. There are ways of making these bikes more practical, like I've put flat pedals on it. You know, the original pedals were quite narrow and not that useful, but just look at it. I just think it's fantastic. I mean, between this and if we go back to the Specialized, they've got quite different looks. I mean, the Peugeot has a flat horizontal top tube. This one is more slanted. This one obviously has suspension, whereas the Peugeot doesn't. These are Marzocchi bombers, but again, it's just that paint scheme, that old school paint scheme, the graphics. It's got scratches, it's got little dents on it. There's a dent somewhere on this seat tube, but you know, it's a cracking little aluminium bike that still does the job. I use it like a gravel bike. It's got this 1x setup on it, which I'm really fond of, which I've managed to use a 10 speaker set and the original LX rear mech for, and then a Hope front chainring, and it shifts with friction shifters, some more modern pedals than perhaps it would have had. Yeah, and those forks are actually travel adjust forks, where you can adjust the travel between, I think it's 100 and 120, or 80 and 120. And then you got hydraulic brakes, which obviously makes a massive difference to an old bike like this. It would originally have had cantees, and I've had to use a bit of a cheater method on the back to run discs. So obviously the front fork is capable of taking a disc, so there was no issue there. And then we've got the Ragley Ragley stem and the On1 OG handlebars. These are one of my favourite alt bars you can get, with a nice sweep back on it. It gives a really lovely comfortable riding position, and it's just, you know, these bikes are far from perfect. They look quite clunky and they look quite used. I mean, look at that sweep back on those bars. It gives such a fantastic ride. And then you've got the best saddles ever made, in my opinion, which is the Charge Spoon, which sets off the bike really nicely. and makes it a proper comfortable bike. You know, I've been out on all dayers on this thing, and then looking at the non-drive side, what I've had to do here is use one of those super cheap clamp-on mounts for the rear disc, because this bike would never have had rear discs on it. So that's just a super cheap clamp-on mount. I think it was like £8 or something on eBay, and it's held up. It's held up through the winter. It hasn't moved. There's no stress on or markings on the frame. That's that travel adjust on the fork again there, where you can wind it up and down to give you more travel. But you know, they're just really characterful bikes, and I just love them.